everyone, my name is Nopar Ekinarahda with last student number 023.
My name is Emis Kebangun and my last student number is 055.
Hello everyone, my name is Dandi Ramadan with last student's number 021.
My name is Reni Fabriani and my last student number is L31.
Hello, I'm Raden Walanawayu Ahmaji and my last student number is 044. And today we will discuss about Morpheme, Morph, and Alomorph.
Hello, my name is Emis Kebangun and I will explaining about morpheme. Morpheme is the smallest unit of meaning in a language. It is essential for understanding how words are constructed and how meaning is conveyed through language. Morphemes are not the same as syllables. A word can have multiple syllables, but only one morpheme, like elephant, or it can have one syllable and multiple morphemes, like dogs, which has two morphemes, dog and the plural s. Morphemes can be classified into two categories. One is free morphemes and two is bound morphemes. Let's talk about the free morpheme first. Free morphemes can stand alone as words. Free morphemes are independently meaningful without needing to attach to any other element. For example, book in I read a book. The word book here is meaningful on its own. Run in I will run tomorrow. The word run doesn't need anything else to make sense. Another example is happy. In she is happy, the word happy conveys meaning without needing a prefix or a suffix. Bound morphemes. Bound morphemes cannot stand alone. Bound morpheme must be attached to free morpheme to convey meaning. Bound morphemes are either prefixes which come before the free morpheme or suffixes which come after the free morpheme. Example of prefix is un in unhappy. The bound morpheme un means not and change the meaning of happy. Suffix at in play. The bound morpheme at change the tense of play to indicate past. Other bound morphemes include inflectional morphemes like as for rulers and derivational morphemes like ness as in happiness. After we're talking about the type of morphemes, let's move on to the function of morphemes. Morpheme has two functions, that is, lexical morphemes and grammatical morphemes. Lexical morphemes provide the core meaning of word. For example, run, dog, and house are all lexical morphemes. Grammatical morphemes serve a function within grammar, such as showing tense, number, or precision. For instance, at, past tense, as, plural, and as, possession, are grammatical morphemes. Now the question is, how can you determine whether a morpheme is free or bound? The simple answer is you can search the Google and then let the Google do it for you. Or you can use this step-by-step approach to determine whether a morpheme is free or bound. The first one is check for independence. Determine if the morpheme can stand alone as meaningful word. If it can, then it's a free morpheme. The second is identify common bound morphemes. Recognize common bound morphemes such as prefix and suffix. This typically can stand alone and must attach to a free morpheme to make sense. The third is analyze word structure. Break down the word into its component morphemes and see if any part needs to be attached to another part to convey meaning. For instance, in happily, happy is free morpheme, while ly is bound morpheme because it modifies happy but can stand alone as meaningful word. And the last is look up definitions. Sometimes Looking up the morpheme in dictionary or linguistic research can help clarify whether it's free or bound, especially for less common morphemes. By following this step, you can determine whether a morpheme is free or bound based on its ability to stand alone and its role in forming words. There is also an important concept in morphemes. Morphemes can sometimes consist of a single letter, such as "s" in dogs, but this letter conveys a specific meaning. Words can have multiple morphemes, for example in unhappiness, there are three morphemes, that is, un, happy, and ness.
Hello everyone, my name is Nopar Ekinarahda with last student number 023, and today I'm going to talk about morphs. Morphs are the smallest parts of a word that have meaning. Let's dive in and understand how they work. The first one is the definition of morphs. A morph is simply a piece of a word that has meaning. Think of them as the building blocks of words. Each word is made up of one or more morphs that combine to create meaning. A morph is a physical form representing some morpheme in a language. It is recurrent distinctive sound or sequence of sound. Now, I will explain about types of morphs. There are two types of morphs. The first one is free morphs, which are morphs that can stand alone as words. These are words we already know like run, book, or sun. A morph that can stand alone as a word is called a free morph. For example, the adjective big, the verb walk, and the noun home are free morphs. For example, in the word cats, we have number two, bound morphs. They cannot stand alone. These need to be attached to other morphs to have meaning. For example, as in cats is a bound morph. It adds meaning, but it can be a word by itself. Now, let's look at a few examples of morphs to make this more clear. The first one is example of free morphs. Take the word run. This is a free morph because it can stand on its own and still make sense. We understand run as an action. Number two, example of bound morphs. Now, let's add something to it. If we say running, we have added ing. This is a bound morph. Ink cannot stand alone, but when we attach it to run, it changes the meaning to the act of running. Each different morph represents a spread morpheme, but sometimes different morphs may represent the same morpheme. These different morphs are called alomorph of that morpheme. Alomorph of alternate is a morph from a group of different morphs which represent the same morpheme. To wrap things up, remember that morphs are the smallest part of words that have meaning. Some can stand alone, like book or run, while others, like s or ed, need to be attached to other morphs. Understanding morph help us break down words and see how their meaning are built. It's a basic but very useful concept in understanding language. That's all from me. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Raden and let's jump to an alomorph. An alomorph is a specific form or variation of a morpheme, which is the smallest unit of meaning in a language. A morpheme can have different forms depending on its context within words, but each form still conveys the same underlying meaning or grammatical function. These different forms are called allomorphs. And I will break it down further. For the morpheme, the smallest meaningful unit in language. And morpheme can be a word or a part of a word like prefix or suffix that can be broken down into smaller meaningful units. And for the allomorph, as a variant form of a morpheme that appears in different contexts but serves the same function. The choice of which alomorph to use is often determined by phonological sound-based rules, grammatical rules, or sometimes just convention. If you feel confused about the definition of alloverb and to ease you understand the material about alloverb, I will give you the common examples of alloverbs. The first example is plural alloverbs in English. The plural morpheme has three different alloverbs. The first one is as in cats, as in cats. The final sound is voiceless. The second one, as in dogs, as in dogs. The final sound is voiced. The third one is as in buses, as in buses. Added when the word ends in a sibilant sound like s, z, sh, or ch. Even though the forms z and is are different, they all represent the same concept of plurality and making them allomorphs of the plural morpheme. And the second example is about past tense allomorphs in English. The past tense morpheme add has different pronunciations or allomorphs. The first one is t, t, as involved, after voiceless sounds. And the second one is d, d, as in jogged, after voiced sounds. And the third one is it, as in needed, after or d sounds. Again, these are allowable because they are variations of the past tense morpheme at. Okay, I think that's all. Thank you.
My name is Reni Fabriani and my student number is L31. I'm going to explain about types of alomorphs. The choice of alomorphs is influenced by different types of conditioning, which dictates when and how a particular alomorph is selected in specific contexts. These conditioning types include phonological conditioning, grammatical conditioning, lexical conditioning, and suppletion. The first one is phonological conditioning. Phonological conditioning occurs when the choice of an allomorph depends on the surrounding sounds or the phonetic environment. In this case, the phonetic properties of the neighboring sounds dictate which allomorph is selected. For example, the English past tense morpheme ed has three different allomorphs, depending on the phonetic environment. T after voiceless consonants such as walked. T after voiced consonants such as in played. It after verbs ending in D or T, such as wanted. In these cases, the selection of the allomorph is based purely of the sound structure of the verb stem. Phonological rules ensure that certain allomorphs are used to ease pronunciation in particular phonetic context. The second one is grammatical conditioning. Grammatical conditioning refers to situations where the choice of allomorph is determined by the grammatical features present in the sentence, such as tense, number, or case. Unlike phonological conditioning, there is no clear sound-based reason for the change. Instead, the choice is linked to a grammatical requirement. For example, for the verbs weaved and sweep, the past tense forms are wept and swept. The presence of the past tense morpheme triggers a change in the stem of the verb, from wept to wept, from swept to swept, which is an example of grammatical conditioning. Similarly, the verb take changes to took in the past tense, even though there is no phonetic reasons for this change. The past tense morpheme in these examples requires the use of a specific alomorph of the verb that is only used in past tense constructions, illustrating how grammar affects the choice of alomorphs. The third one is lexical conditioning. Lexical conditioning occurs when the choice of an alomorph is dependent on a specific word or lexical item. In this case, the alomorph is selected not because of phonological or grammatical rules, but because a particular word demands a special form. For example, the plural of ox is not oxes, but oxen. The use of alomorph "un" is lexically conditioned. It applies only to specific nouns like ox. This form does not follow the regular rules for forming plural in English, where most plurals are formed by adding s or es. Another example is plural form of child, being children instead of childs. The form children is lexically conditioned, meaning that this particular noun has a unique allomorph for its plural form. The fourth is suppletion. Suppletion is an extreme form of allomorphy where the allomorphs of an morpheme have no phonetic relationship to each other. The forms are entirely different from each other, but represent the same morpheme. For example, the comparative and superlative forms of good are better and best. There is no phonetic similarity between good, better, and best, yet they all represent the same lexeme good. The verb to go in English also exhibits suppletion, as the past tense form is went, which is entirely different from go. Suppletions represent a situation where the forms are so irregular that they do not follow any phonological or grammatical conditioning, and the allomorphs are essentially separate words that we have to come to represent different forms of the same morpheme. Next, why allomorphs matter? Allomorphs matter because they reflect the flexibility and complexity of language, showing how a single morpheme can adapt to different phonological, grammatical, and lexical environments. Understanding allomorphs helps us grasp how language operates at a deeper level, revealing how meaning can be preserved across various word forms while adhering to specific language rules. This makes language efficient and adaptable to different communicative needs. Alright, that's all from me.
Hello everyone, my name is Dandi Ramadan with last students number 021. In morphology, there is not always one-to-one correlation between morphemes and morphs, in which one morpheme is realized by a morph. The first is when a single phonological form may be used to represent different morphemes, called homophone. Homophony is the state where a single morph represents more than one morpheme. So, homophones are forms which sound the same but differ in their meaning or grammatical function. For example, the phonological form side has three orthographic representations, each one of which represents a different morpheme. Sight, sight, sight. Another one is the phonological form right, has four spellings which represent four separate morphemes. Right, 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 right. Second, when a single morpheme may be represented by a variety of phonological representations. For example, the past tense morpheme ed has the three allomorphs id, de, and te. Third, when the same string of sounds may cumulatively represent several morphemes, called portmanteau morph. Portmanteau morph is a single morph which simultaneously represents a bundle of several different grammatical elements. For example, the s ending in English verbs, example in the word of walks, signals three morphemes simultaneously, namely third person, present tense, and singular number. Fourth, when the same word form may represent different grammatical words, syncretism is the state where the same form is used to represent distinct morphological concepts. For example, A. I walked to school yesterday. B. I have walked across the street. The same word form walk in example A and example B represents two distinct grammatical forms. In A, walk as the verb in the past tense, and in B, walk as the verb in the past participle. Irregular verbs like see and take exhibit no syncretism. They have distinct past tense and past participle forms. For example, see, saw, seen, and take, took, taken. The fifth is zero alomorph. Zero alomorph is an alomorph which is not overtly marked by a morph. The number of morphemes present may exceed the number of morphs available to represent them. This happens when a grammatical contrast which is marked overtly by a morph in some words is not overtly marked in others. For example, A. Last week I cut the grass. B. I put those carnations in the vase yesterday. C. Yesterday they shut the factory down. And D. The mob hit him last week. In English, verbs in the past tense will usually end in ed. However, the verbs in the past tense in those four sentences above do not end in ed. In this case, the past tense morpheme is realized by a zero alomorph. The last, when the number of morphs that can be isolated may exceed the number of morphemes represented. In other words, there may be a surplus word building element which does not realize any morpheme. This element is usually called an empty morph. So, empty morph is a surplus word building element which does not realize any morpheme. Look at the example. In A, the adjectives are formed simply by adding the suffix "al" to nouns. The noun medicine and its suffix "al" become adjective medicinal. Also in the noun person, add its suffix "al" become adjective personal. In B, however, there is an empty morph "u" that does not represent any morpheme which is inserted immediately before "al." The word class changed by adding "al" not "u." So, "u" is the example of empty morph.